everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis. Today I'm here with Scott Dawson, President of Core Business Solutions, and Stephen Williams, Business Advisor at Tennessee Small Business Development Center, and former CEO and expert in manufacturing turnaround and business strategy. Glad you both could join us.
Good to be here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, guys. Now, today's podcast is part of our Survive and Thrive series, the podcast dedicated to delivering practical strategies for small businesses. Our mission is to help you navigate these unprecedented times of change and uncertainty. Our episodes are packed with real-world advice from trusted experts and tailored specifically for small business leaders like you. Thanks for joining us as we explore the insights that can empower you and your business not only survive, but truly thrive. Today's topic is You're Not Alone, building business resilience through relationships. But before we get into our topic, let's learn a little bit about our guest and their journey. We'll start with Stephen. Could you share a little bit about yourself?
Happy to. As you alluded to, I was in manufacturing for a number of years, roughly about 20, 25 years. That was my first career I like to refer to. We were manufacturing electrical motor parts for DC motors in heavy industry. Mm-hmm. From there, I transitioned into consulting and boutique investment banking and working with distressed companies throughout the Southeast and helping them obtain levels of optimum performance. In 2021, I came on board with SBDC.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you being here. Sounds like you have quite a bit of knowledge about what we're going to talk about today. Scott, how about you?
Well, Stephen, it's interesting. You talk about two careers. I have almost the same matching two careers. So my first career was in manufacturing, in electronics manufacturing in the San Jose Bay Area. Learned things from the ground up there and end up in a quality management position. And that kind of gave me the background to get into consulting, which is what Core Business Solutions is all about. It's interesting. You live the life and then you want to help others live the life is kind of the way I view all that.
Right.
I think we have a lot of synergies between us for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you both being here. I'm going to pass it over to Scott and have him start with some of the questions, and I'll chime in here and there with some, and we'll move forward that way.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and Stephen, it's been fun to get to know you. A lot of interesting times you have worked your way through over your career. And as you and I discussed, there's been a lot of disruptions in different periods over the last many years. When businesses face disruption or business owners face disruption, sometimes they kind of back off or shut down a little bit. They're really afraid to make decisions and move forward. Others reach out and ask for help and try to be proactive about working their way through a time of transition. From your experience, what separates the two between those who kind of shut down and try to do things on their own versus those that reach out? Kind of how do you compare those two groups?
Well, the way I look at it from my perspective is every time there's a buffeting in your industry or in the market space, I tend to view that as an opportunity. And I think it's a good opportunity to check all your systems, right? Prior to getting on this session today, we made certain that everything was operating, doing so that we could give our best performance. And it's the same way with business. We want to check. Right. We want to go through a business systems check, and that means we want to turn over all of the rocks and look at those operating instances to make certain that we're not missing something. And it's also a good opportunity to reach out to your resource support partners.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that, Stephen. I know you have advocated for people to use resources that might be at their fingertips, if you will. But what are some of those advisors that business owners may have available to them?
Well, none of us are in business alone. And we have banking, sure. We have finance, we have insurance, we have perhaps outside CPA resources, and legal. My practice, when I'm running a company, I keep those individuals in straight communication line with what's happening with the business. So couple of things. If good things are happening with the business, I want those resource partners to know about it. If bad things are about to happen and I want to be in front of the bad news and not behind it or in the middle of it, I want to make certain that they're on side as to what I'm anticipating. All of these individuals are working with different clients. Mm-hmm. They're hearing different things. They're plugged into their own industry. And if I put myself in position to where I can benefit from what they know on the front end, that's going to be most helpful to me and gives them room to operate to be able to help support me. You know,
right.
I've had clients come to me after the fact, after the bad news is dropped and after they've had a conversation with a banker or the attorney. As an advisor or a consultant at that point in time, I'm somewhat limited in the resources and the tools that I have available to me.
Right. Why do you feel that people don't reach out sooner?
I think sometimes it's hopefulness. It's hopefulness that it's going to go away.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't be as bad as what we think it might be. So there is a tendency to kind of hunker down. And in some cases, I feel like business owners feel like somebody else can't know their business as well as perhaps they can, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe rely, and this isn't wrong, but rely on those that know the industry or industry associates. But there's value to be had by an outside perspective. You know, I find that every day in my work with Tennessee Small Business Development Center. We have an outside perspective, we have a fresh lens on the business and can share impacts from others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that certainly is helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with that, certainly, Stephen. And I think taking a look at the challenges that you're going through from different vantage points can open up your thought process beyond what maybe your initial reaction is or your habitual reaction. Because I think we all get into routines and we get into habits and we see problems the same way and we try to solve problems the same way because it's worked for us in the past. But I think when a major market disruption is happening, like today, a lot of small businesses are facing uncertainty regarding the tariffs or government contracts or different things are going on and might impact us in our industry. And some of these are, as X talked about earlier, unprecedented. You're brave to put that word in the script, X, because it's hard to pronounce. I think times are different. I mean, it reminds me of COVID in some regards. But I think the potential change in some markets and for some industries can be pretty substantial. And I think everyone's trying to react to that. So reaching out, as you suggested, to folks with another set of experience that you don't have. Maybe they're not experienced in your industry, but they might bring insight.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like what you said about habitual reactions, Scott. That's something that is very easy, I think, to get into because it worked before. Why wouldn't it work again?
Right. No, I was going to say, Scott mentioned the unknown, and that's the perfect time to really shore up what you know about your business. And that's what I was talking about, the systems checks, just going across all of your operating platforms in the business and knowing what you need to know there. And if you've got a deficiency, if you've got something that looks like it needs to be updated, that's a perfect time to reach out and start a conversation with an outside resource. And a lot of times an SBDC counselor can help walk you through that process. And that's a no-cost impact to your business. We don't charge for our services. Mm. So that's a very helpful tool and a resource to walk through. As I now go into, I met with a client yesterday. When I go into their business, there's not a billable hours clock ticking. And I'm impartial. So the resources that I bring in, I don't have a financial relationship with them. It's all about the best for the business and helping that business move forward. So that's the way an SBDC approaches it. But, if I'm running a business myself, I want to lean on good partners in turbulent times.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I wonder, Stephen, if we could maybe talk about an experience you've gone through. We'll put a little meat on these bones. And I know you had talked to me about a story that when you were a CEO, you went through some pretty significant changes to deal with supply shortages. Can you talk us through that experience and how you kind of use the outside help to arrive at a plan forward?
You mentioned that, and that makes me think of a couple of instances, but the one you alluded to was there was a severe shortage of copper at one point in time. And so we had to lean on resources and opportunities to come up with creative ways to find a different supplier, new suppliers. Right. As a result of that, we developed a new inventory process that was entirely beneficial for the company. So this new copper supplier relationship led to a consignment opportunity, which made it worth it for me to put an expansion on the company's building just for the purpose of housing or storing that inventory. So that's an example of that was a problem. That was something unknown, but because we were working with good individuals and pulled the team together, we came up with a really significant opportunity that had huge impact downstream for us and was very beneficial to the company's cash flow and operations.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Great way to illustrate the point. You said you thought of another example. You want to tell us quickly about that?
Absolutely. 2007, 2008 Great Recession left a lot of scars on businesses, of course. Mm-hmm. That was a time when I was working in my consulting capacity, and I was asked by a financial institution to come in and take a look at a company that they were funding. And that resulted in a very intensive turnaround project where we really had to spread the company apart and look at all of the metrics and the dynamics of the business to see where there were improvement opportunities for the cash flow. And we were successful in that project, but it took long hours and many days of pulling senior management team together and really developing an openness in a communication and taking a company that had operated from a very closely held perspective to creating vision systems.
Right.
And as I say, opening up that communication so everybody across the board knows what's happening in the business, what's our goals, what's our KPIs, where do we want to go, and what do we need to do from week to week, from month to month to be able to hit those goals. That's an example of where communication was absolutely vital and became the mission critical aspect of how we managed our business.
That's great.
Yeah, I love the word openness, and you can view that in many ways, but I think you were referring to just openness of mind to think a different way, try something new, trust each other, to have conversations that maybe we weren't able to have or weren't willing to have in the past. Maybe sometimes personal dynamics affect this and work habits affect this and all of those type of things. But when times are tough, as a leader, you need to encourage people to set those things aside and let's have some tough conversations if we need to about change that maybe we haven't been willing to look at, but it might be vital, the vital fix that we need. To deal with the problem we have in front of us.
And if you're a CEO of a small business, sometimes there's the fear of not knowing in front of your staff, in front of your team. And
right.
And I don't suggest that you display that you don't have a clue in front of everyone. But I do think that you build a team of individuals where there is this candid conversation that can take place. And it's okay to be wrong across the board.
Right.
That's how we learn.
That's exactly how we learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a question for you in regards, you were talking about when you had copper as an issue. Mm-hmm. And what, maybe something you learned from that is, what are some of the early warning signs that it might be time to rethink looking for another vendor, maybe look at vendor terms, maybe just rethinking your operations like you did when it came to the, your second issue? What are some signs they could look for?
I keep coming back to communication. This was also a time in the industry where there was a huge demand across the board on the copper industry, and some of the major purchasers of copper were increasing their demand. So think Square D, The electrical component industry was putting a huge demand because of significant growth. We were a small company. We were a significant company in revenue and vital in our industry, but still Square D was buying so much, had such a greater purchasing power than what we had individually. And that was some industry noise or industry news that was coming down through the associations that we were involved in. And so that kind of gave us a heads up that we may need to start looking around and see if there's an opportunity for us there.
One final follow-up on that, Stephen, and it seems that every few years we have something new we got to deal with, either in an individual industry or across the economy, as we're facing right now. But it seems like these are regular events. Capturing lessons learned seems like it's important. And do you have any thoughts on best practices of how to either document or carry forward lessons learned from, we'll call them past crises that might have come up?
Right. That falls into the category of the intellectual capital and capturing that information and good documenting systems. I'm working on a project right now that's tied to succession planning.
Okay. Yeah.
For a client. And this is very similar to the work that you would possibly do if you were preparing a company to go to market, or if you were doing a succession plan, as I mentioned, or looking at M&A activity. But going through, and here again, each operating system in the business, having an assessment tool to see where you are. Do you have green, yellow, or red targets on these processes? And are there areas for improvement? And that's a good opportunity for you to be able to say, here's where we are. This is what we're going to do. And then here's what the result is. And having a mechanism to be able to capture that. So it's electronic systems. It can be as simple as a Word document. It can be an Excel file, but just having a practice and a process for capturing that type of information and having the longevity to it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. If someone doesn't have an advisory network, as you had described, it doesn't feel like they've got people in their business relationships that they can reach out to, what can they do now to try to get the doors opened and find opportunities for collaboration?
These can be formal organizations. They can be ad hoc organizations, groups that come together and just decide to meet. And I think there's value in that. And, most everyone has a chamber of commerce in their backyard. Right. That may be a rallying point or a central point where individuals can begin to meet. There's value in individuals, manufacturers from different industries meeting and talking about issues that may be impacting their business. And then you begin to uncover commonality and see maybe a recurring thread, because you may be operating in the same region, and so you're buffered by some sort of economic factor in that particular region. And then by having those conversations, you begin to form solutions or begin to establish that network where you could have providers come in and talk to you about possible workforce opportunities. That could be led by a 2-year college or focusing on workforce, junior college, or that could be led by, a 4-year institution that may have some sort of industry support effort tied to the university. So, think along those lines and make use of those resources.
Yeah. And I think the chamber is a great direction. As you mentioned, the SBDCs, which we're a big fan of. I'm a big fan of it. That was a critical part of our startup process early years, to just have that guidance and direction. I know there are manufacturing extension partnerships around the country, the MEPs, as well as the Apex Accelerators that really focus on the government contracts. But there are taxpayer-funded resources available if you are willing to reach out, make contact, and sit down and have a conversation about what you're facing. And oftentimes, if they can't help you, I guarantee they'll introduce you to somebody who can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And I'm glad you mentioned, Scott, Apex, because they're awesome when it comes to government contracting and supporting small business. That's their sole mission.
Yeah,
and they do
for
a
sure.
fantastic job.
All right. Well, this is a lot of good information. Just to recap, make sure that you learn lessons from your past disruptions and reach out to people that may have been through them. You have people like we talked just about a second ago, SBDCs, MEPs, etc. A lot of them are free. A lot of them are there to help you specifically through these types of situations. And then find really good strategic relationships with advisors, vendors, peers. You know, something I think one of our past guests was saying, she's like, you all know each other and sometimes you're frenemies, but maybe now's the time to reach out and see if maybe we're both going through the same thing and we can have a synergistic relationship. So is that what I'm taking from all of this, guys?
Absolutely.
Absolutely right, X.
Great. Do you have anything last you want to touch with on Stephen, close everything up?
Other than just reaching out to SBDCs, fantastic organization, and I'm on a couple of committees that are that span across the nation, and I'm just really impressed with the caliber of consultancy and individuals that are part of SBDCs. It's a fantastic group and really supportive of small business.
And they're available in every state and every community. Get online, get on the website, or send an email to us. We'll get you in contact with Stephen, and he'll plug you into the right person if you need help that way, too.
Happy to do it.
And his contact information is in the description.
Great.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, X.
And that wraps up this episode of the Survive and Thrive series on the Quality Hub podcast, where we unpack real-world insights and share practical strategies to help small businesses like yours. If you found these conversations helpful, share them with your colleagues, your network, or anyone who could use a boost of practical guidance. You can access all past episodes on our website at thecoresolution.com, and be sure to check out the podcast description for contact information on Core Business Solutions and our podcast guests. And remember, thriving in a changing world starts with knowledge and the courage to act on it. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep leading with clarity, resilience, and purpose. Have a great day.